Property revaluation is about updating the value of your property, but what value exactly is being updated? To answer this question, we have to get grounded in a very important fact, which is that at any point in time, your property has two values associated with it. Assessed value is the value according to the government. The second value is market value, and this is the value according to the real estate market at large. Let's look at these two values in a little bit more detail. Assessed value is listed on your tax record, which I've got pictured here on the top right of the slide. Your tax record is public data, meaning anyone can access it, and it's got useful information that defines your property. One piece of data in your tax record is your assessed value. Assessed value is only updated at certain points in time, meaning for the most part, it's a static value. It only changes when the government chooses to update it, and the most common reason it gets changed is through citywide revaluation. The second value your home has associated with it is market value, and this is the value according to the real estate market at large. So if you sold your house in an arm's length transaction, the purchase price would be considered the market value. Market value is in flux all the time, based on many factors that are occurring and unfolding in the real estate market at large. And the person who can probably best give you insight into your market value is a local licensed realtor, because they can use comparable sales, provide an estimated proxy for what your house might sell for. So revaluation is this. It's when the city government goes through the formal legal process of updating all of the assessed values to be equal to the current market values. The entire tax base is getting updated to a new assessed value. Revaluation is rooted in state law, and the city is required to keep assessed values equal to market values. Otherwise, tax inequity can occur. Now let's take a look at this in context of a sample home. Let's imagine that you have a house that is assessed at $104,000, but has a current market value of $300,000. Revaluation is the process of updating your home's assessed value to equal $300,000. So the question then becomes, will my taxes automatically go up if my assessed value goes up? And the answer here is no, not necessarily, and that's because revaluation updates your assessed value, but revaluation also updates the general tax rate. General tax rate is the three component rates all added together. So just a note here that for property tax purposes, we pay a city tax, a school tax, and a county tax here in New Jersey. And we refer to all three of those taxes combined as the general tax rate. Now let's look at the tax rate formula. Tax rate formula on the lower left of the screen here is simply the tax levy divided by the tax base. Tax levy, by the way, is simply the amount raised in property tax to fund our three local governments. Each of those governments has its own levy and its own rate. So we'll look at all of this combined to be one total tax levy. So the levy divided by the base is equal to the rate. Okay, well, if in revaluation we're updating the base, then the rate gets updated too. So there's this relationship between the tax base and the tax rate. It's critical to understand this relationship because the tax rate changes and your assessed value changes. Those are the two pieces that we need to understand your new tax expense. Before we get into the next slide, which is an example of walking through tax expense update, let's take a look at the lower right of this slide and just check out the math mechanics. What I've done is I provided some simple numerator-denominator math simply to illustrate how the rate changes if the tax base changes. So let's imagine that we have a levy of 1 and we have a tax base of 2. But then revaluation occurs and the tax base increases to 4. So tax base goes from 2 to 4. Notice the rates. So the old rate is 50% because the levy of 1 divided by the tax base of 2 is 1 divided by 2 is 50%. But then the tax base gets updated to 4 and we can see the rate changes to 25%. So this is what I mean by numerator-denominator math. As the denominator grows larger, the rate goes down. And this is what can sometimes happen in a revaluation if assessed values throughout the city all get increased and the tax base at large gets increased, the rate will go down. So let's use the sample home from before, which had an assessed value of $104,000 prior to the revaluation. And we'll also consider a citywide tax rate of 7% prior to the revaluation, which means this home's tax expense would be $7,280. Then revaluation occurs and we have these two big changes. The assessed value goes up from $104,000 to $300,000, and now also the tax rate goes down from 7% to 1.5%. This means that after the revaluation, this homeowner's property tax would be $4,500. And we can see that even though the assessed value went up, property tax actually decreased. We must understand both the assessed value change and the citywide tax rate change to understand if property tax will go up or down in revaluation.